welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. In this video, there's some news out from the church talking about growth in Africa, the Philippines, and this video has been long overdue. We've talked about all these different groups throughout the world that claim Israelite heritage, that they're descended from the 10 lost tribes, and I've often wondered about the Philippines because there's so many members of the church there. The Philippines is one of the powerhouses of the church. Now, in regards to Africa, we've actually talked a bit about Africa pretty extensively, especially Nigeria, and even more specifically, the Igbos in Nigeria. So if you want to learn about them, go to my playlist called 10 Lost Tribes, and we talk about Africa and especially Nigeria, Ghana, that kind of area. So, the Philippines. I've always wondered what is going on there. Why do we have so many members of the church? It's a great thing, but there must be some reason behind it. Well, we're going to talk about that right now. So, this article just came out. Africa, Philippines lead church growth over past 10 years. Okay, so from 2011 to 2021, the highest growth rates in church membership occurred in Africa and the Philippines. So Africa as a whole, the entire continent, and then Philippines, the country. Okay, so the church overall grew from 14.13 million members in 2011 to 16.81 million in 2021. So we're getting pretty close to that 17 million mark, and there, once again, there's another 17 on top of all the other ones that we talk about on the channel, for an increase of 18.92%. Okay, so here's a little infographic. You can see that Africa is leading the way. I might have to do a separate video about this because there have been a lot of temples announced in Africa. In fact, I was going to do this. Okay, let me come out here. Let me look at the map here. So in Africa, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 temples, either in operation, under renovation, under construction, or announced. Okay, let's go back up here. This is a great website, by the way. I'd recommend checking this out. Now let's look at Europe. They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So they're tied. Africa and Europe are tied. And Europe has had a big head start, and this is where we're at. Now, not trying to cast shame on Europe, but it has, over the years, become increasingly secular and agnostic, and that was the case when I served my mission here in the Spain-Barcelona mission. We had a hard time finding Europeans, Spaniards, that wanted to get baptized. It did happen, it just wasn't as frequent as the immigrants that were in Spain. So, Africa, in a relatively short time frame, has caught up to Europe in terms of temples. And so, here you go. Here's the actual numbers. You can see why. 121.41%. That is a lot. And then under that, we have the Philippines at 28.99, leading everyone else other than Africa, the entire continent. So for one country, just a single country, it seems that the Philippines is really, really leading the way. Okay? Under them, the next country would be Brazil. I'm skipping this because this is Central America. This is a collection of countries, just like Africa is a collection of a whole bunch of countries. So really, the Philippines is on top. It's on top. If we come over here to this Wikipedia article, we've come here before. You can see that right now the United States has 6.7 million. Mexico has 1.4. Brazil has 1.4. And then the Philippines is in the number 4 spot, which is interesting. We have North America, South America, and then Asia with the Philippines. Okay, they're at 833,000. I don't know when this was updated. As of December 31st, 2019. So this obviously would have changed since that time. But anyway, you can see that something special is happening in the Philippines, right? You think about Central and South America, and we always talk about the Lamanites and all that. And yeah, that shows through with Mexico and Brazil. But then you have the Philippines, and then after that, you have a bunch of Central and South American countries after that. So the Philippines really kind of stands out, and we're going to explore why that probably is. And it's interesting. I'll show you. The number of members in Africa more than doubled during the 10 years. The Philippines, Central America, Brazil, and Pacific Islands had increases of more than 25%. And we know that the Pacific Islands, there's a lot of Nephite blood there. We've done videos about the Nephites in the Pacific, specifically Tonga, Samoa, New Zealand, so on and so forth. Okay, in raw numbers, the regions with the largest increases in church membership were, so this is just like the absolute number, not the percentage. But so, absolute number, the United States, 618,000, Spanish-speaking countries in South America, okay, so whatever. Okay, so let's move on. Okay, so I found this article. This is from 2017, September 10th, 2017. Philippines reaches major Mormon milestone, 100 stakes. Okay, and you can see this celebration that they're having here. Let's look at a couple of these pictures. Okay, there's Elder Anderson and his wife with this celebration, the big 100. Okay, so what did I find out from this? What are some interesting things here? Okay, this is Elder Anderson speaking. Why among all the nations of the earth has the Savior set his feet so firmly here in the Philippines? He asked. It is because of who you are. Elder Anderson and his wife, Sister Kathy Anderson, praised the Filipino church members for their gentleness, humility, education, optimism, and belief in Jesus Christ. This is a special place, Elder Anderson said. Do not underestimate who you are. The most important part of the Philippines is the people. And I don't think that he's saying because of their gentleness, humility, although they are those things, I think, because of who they are. And I'm going to show you what I mean by that. I think that they are a special people because of the way because of their ancestry. Okay, we're going to explore their ancestry, essentially. The milestone is significant. The LDS Church has only reached this milestone in 4 other countries of the world: Brazil, Mexico, the United States, and Peru. Now, even back then, I think Philippines had more members, but for some reason, I guess they didn't have as many stakes as Peru. But if we go back here, again, you'll notice that Peru, according to this, has 200,000 less members than the Philippines. As far as stakes go, there's a column here for stakes. So stakes, according to this, the Philippines has 115, and then Peru has 112. Okay. So, okay. Although the first official Mormon conference was held in the Philippines on May 13th, 1945, it was only attended by Latter-day Saints in the U.S. military. And we're going to explore why the United States had a presence in the Philippines. Of course, many of you probably already know, but if you don't, we're going to go through the history of the Philippines because I think it has everything to do with what we're seeing here. Okay, the Philippines wasn't dedicated for the preaching of the gospel for another decade. On August 21st, 1955, then Elder Joseph Fielding Smith, who later became the 10th president of the church, offered a prayer of dedication on the Philippines. 1955. On April 28, 1961, under the direction of then Elder Gordon B. Hinckley, who would later serve as a prophet. The church was legally registered in the Philippines and served permission to send missionaries to the nation. Okay, so it was dedicated in 1955, and then they got the legal permission for it just several years later, about 6 years later. Since that time, church growth in the Philippines has been rapid, said Keith Erickson, director of the Church History Library. Quote, if we measure from the date of the first stake to the 100th, the Philippines reached the milestone in 44 years. The first stake in the Philippines, the Manila Philippine stake, was created in 1973. That same milestone was reached by Mexico in 94 years. Okay, Philippines, 44. Mexico, which currently has the second largest membership outside of the United States. See right here, Mexico, 1.4 million, almost 1.5, in fact. Took them 94 years. The Philippines, just 44 years. In Peru in 43 years. So I guess Peru reached it faster. But by this measure, only Brazil... What? In 44 years, and Peru in 43 years. Oh, wait, whatever. Okay, by this measure, only Brazil was faster, 27 years. In the United States, the only states outside of Utah to reach the milestone, California, Idaho, and Arizona, all took more than 100 years. So, fast. It's happening fast, and it seems like it's still going on. This article that we're reading right now is from 2017. This article that we started out with is from today. It is still, they are on fire. What began in a quiet cemetery with only a small group now has 21 missions, 2 operating temples, with a bunch more on the way. Let's look at the Philippines temple map. Let's come over here. Philippines. Okay, so red is in operation. So there are 2 operating temples right now. And then we got blue that's under construction, yellow that's announced. So altogether, with what is currently in operation, under construction, and announced, there's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 temples in the Philippines. Let's compare that to some other countries. Let's go to Japan. Japan has 1, 2, 3, 4. So Japan only has 4. Let's go up here. Let's check out Australia. Australia has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the Philippines is going to have more than Australia. Let's check out South America. Let's look at Peru. Peru has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So, yeah, the Philippines, that's a lot of temples. Okay. Okay. 100 total. Okay. Has 2 operating temples with 2 more temples to be built. Well, since that time, that's increased by a lot. And a total membership of 750,000, which has increased a lot since that time, since 2017. In 100 stakes and 75 districts, said Elder Shane M. Bowen, a General Authority 70 and president of the church's Philippines area. Quote, this is truly worthy of a celebration. Yep, I would agree. So let's look at a few interesting things about the ancestry of people in the Philippines. Okay, so here we have this website. We've come here before. This is called Kulanu. This is one of several different kind of like organizations out there. Their purpose is to find Jews and also people that claim to be from the 10 Lost Tribes throughout the world and help them basically support them, and also in some cases help them make aliyah or immigration to the state of Israel. Okay, this is one of those groups. So Kulanu. If you go to communities, here it has all the different countries with communities that they're working with, and there's one in the Philippines. Okay, so let's go there. Let's read this short little thing. Philippines. The Jewish community of the Philippines is very old and very diverse. A group in the Visayas archipelago is a lost tribe, descended from Jews who arrived in the 13th century. Their language shares several fascinating links with Hebrew, and the group, which has taken to calling themselves Balik Hebrew, is currently experiencing a renaissance. The Philippines also has a growing community of B'nai ANOUSIM, Jews forcibly converted to Christianity during the Spanish Inquisition. When Spain began to colonize the Philippines in the 16th century, B'nai ANOUSIM arrived as colonizers, secretly keeping many Jewish practices. Today, there are also mainstream established Jewish communities in the Philippines, particularly in Manila. Finally, a growing Noahide movement has emerged. That's like the 7 laws that Judaism says that the Gentile nations should keep. Like during the Messianic era, the Jews would have the higher laws. They have the 10 Commandments and then all the other um, commandments, right? Mitzvot. But for Gentiles, they just have 7 in there. It's based on their reading of the Bible that there's like 7 commandments that non-Israelites are expected to keep. So finally, a growing Noahide movement has emerged across the archipelago. Some Noahide communities have sought the conversion of Jewish practice and have adopted a Haredi form of Judaism. Haredi, that's like Orthodox, basically. Kulanu works closely with. Okay, I'm not gonna. So there you go. So you have this community that's in the Philippines. Um, let's see. Let's look at Spain, the Spanish Empire. If you look at this map, you can see basically the extent of everywhere that Spain went and colonized at, and at one point owned these different lands, right? And you can see down here in Africa a little bit, obviously in South America, Central America, the West Indies or the Caribbean, and then large parts of the United States as well. They also had colonies or places that they oversaw that was theirs during their empire over here in Europe, and then all the way over here you see the Philippines. This right here. Let's zoom in. Oh, that just actually zoomed out. Okay, got tricked. Anyway, you see the Philippines right there. I want to read a few key things here. Did I have any key things here? No, I just wanted it for the map. That's right. Philippines. Okay. No, this. Okay, sorry, I didn't organize this very good. So to understand the Philippines, first you have to understand Spain, I think. So again, this map right here, at one point Spain was in control of the Philippines. Why is that important? Well, for one thing, look at this from New York Times. DNA study shows 20% of Iberian population has Jewish ancestry. The Iberian Peninsula, that is Spain and Portugal, right here. This peninsula, Spain, Portugal, it's the Iberian Peninsula. They're basically the same people. My mom is from Portugal, by the way. I brought that up a number of times on the channel. So 20% of the Iberian population has Jewish ancestry. Spain and Portugal have a history of fervent Catholicism, but almost a third of the population now turns out to have a non-Christian genetic heritage. About 20% of the current population of the Iberian Peninsula has Sephardic Jewish ancestry. And Sephardic, those are, just like what it sounds like here, those are basically the Spanish and Portuguese Jews during the Middle Ages, and part of the diaspora that once the Jews spread throughout the world. Spain and Portugal is like one of the larger communities of Jews, and they're called Sephardic Jews. So has Sephardic Jewish ancestry, and 11% bear Moorish DNA signatures. That's like the area of, like, well, it's basically North Africa, Morocco, that kind of area. And that's because for a long time, the Moors, the Muslims, they had a large piece of the Iberian Peninsula. We're going to go into that in just a minute. a team of geneticists reports. The genetic signatures reflect the forced conversions to Christianity in the 14th and 15th centuries after Christian armies wrested Spain back from Muslim control, right? Otherwise known as the Inquisition, right? The forced conversions. So what was happening with that? Well, okay, so you have to, it's called the Reconquista or the Reconquest, and this is like a big deal over there. Okay. Reconquista, English reconquest, in medieval Spain and Portugal, a series of campaigns by Christian states to recapture territory from the Muslims, Moors, who had occupied most of the Iberian Peninsula in the early 8th century, or in other words, the 700s. In fact, let me pull this up on a map. Spain. Actually, let's do Moorish occupation of Spain. Maybe there's like a good map of that. Let's go to images. Okay, yeah, here in Wikipedia. Let's pull up this image. You see Spain and Portugal right here. This was all conquered by this northern African people called the Moors that were Muslims. They basically had the entire peninsula except for just like this tiny little part up here, this tiny little sliver. Okay, so this is the situation that we're dealing with as we're going through this story. Okay, now remember we've talked about how Islam started basically in the 600s and then quickly conquered a lot of the world afterwards. Let's see. Map of Islamic expansion. Let's go to images. I'd rather go to let's go here to Wikipedia again. See, here you can see here Spain over here, Northern Africa, of course, like pretty much the entire Middle East, and then eastward. This isn't like a full map, but you can see here. So Islam started down here in Mecca, Medina, and then whatever, and then it spread like crazy. Sideways, both ways, then up into Europe over here, Spain and Portugal. Okay, so keep that in mind. Okay, so this went on for a long time. So the 700s until basically the 1400s. The 700s until the 1400s. So I know that there's some debate about this, but roughly 700 to 800 years, this was the situation on the Iberian Peninsula. The last significant Muslim incursion into Christian Iberia culminated with the Battle of Rio Salado, 1340, where Portuguese and Castilian forces administered a crushing defeat to the armies of Marinid Sultan Abu al-Hassan Ali. The kingdoms of Aragon, Castile, and Portugal spent the next century consolidating their holdings until the marriage of Ferdinand II of Aragon and Isabella I of Castile in 1469. And remember, what happened in 1492, just, a little while later? Columbus, right? So after Spain and Portugal successfully drove them out, and they fixed this situation. I'm saying fixed from their point of view, and on a personal note, I'm glad that happened, but that's me personally with my family history. So they pushed them out, and then you might expect that after 700 to 800 years, they might be kind of upset about what happened. And so what happens is the Catholic monarchs, as Ferdinand and Isabella came to be known, completed the conquest of Granada in 1492. Many historians believe that the crusading spirit of the Reconquista was preserved in the subsequent Spanish emphasis on religious uniformity, evidenced by the strong influence of the Inquisition and the expulsion of people of Moorish and Jewish descent. So, I'm not trying to stir any debate or anything like that, but if you were Spanish, and you had successfully taken all this back, and all this is basically along religious lines, you might be a little want to make sure that something like that never happens again, and you might not be too happy with people from other from other faiths. It's not funny because horrible things happened, obviously, with the Inquisition, but that's what happened. That's what happened. So okay, so after that, um, let's go over here to the Philippines. What happened? Well, how does the Philippines tie into this? Okay, Spanish explorer Ruy Lopez de Villalobos, during his expedition in 1542, so this was like about 100 years later, not really 100 years later, but it was almost immediately after the completion of the Reconquest, named the islands of Leyte and Samar, gosh dang it, Leyte and Samar, Filipinas. Okay, Filipinas, after Philip II of Spain. Okay, so that's how the Philippines got its name. A Spaniard named it. A Spanish explorer named it Filipinas after Philip II of Spain. Then the Prince of Asturias. Eventually, the name Las Islas Filipinas would be used to cover the archipelago's Spanish possessions. Before Spanish rule was established, other names such as Islas del Poniente, Islands of the West, and Magellan's name for the islands, San Lázaro, were used by the Spanish to refer to islands in the region. Okay. So, colonial rule from 1565 to 1946. Colonization began when Spanish explorer Miguel López de Legazpi arrived from Mexico in 1565. In 1571, Spanish Manila became the capital of the Spanish East Indies, which encompassed Spanish territories in Asia and in the Pacific. The Spanish successfully invaded the different local states by employing the principle of divide and conquer, bringing most of what is now the Philippines into a single unified administration. Disparate barangays were deliberately consolidated into towns where Catholic missionaries were more easily able to convert the inhabitants to Christianity. From 1565 to 1821, the Philippines was governed as part of the Mexico-based Viceroyalty of New Spain, later administered from Madrid following the Mexican War of Independence. Okay, so right off the bat right here, what you have going on, okay, we have a people that have come over here and colonized this people, a people that have about 20% of their ancestry being Jewish, right? And whenever you colonize, there's going to be intermarrying, there's going to be intermixing and all that stuff. So you have Jewish DNA that's entering the Filipino gene pool. And then on top of that, you have the Spaniards that are converting them into Christianity. And it's during this like height where where the Catholic Church is like in full swing with Spain and Portugal, where they're really fervent about converting people, right? So you have Spanish DNA that's coming in. You also, and like we were reading before over here on the Kulanu thing, he was talking about how you had not only obviously those that had Jewish DNA, but people that knew that they were still Jewish, but they were basically pretending to be Christian. They officially were Christian, but they were still, at heart, they were Jewish. That came over to the Philippines as well. Okay, so Christianity, Jewish DNA, okay, that's going to make a difference because we know that those, ultimately what I'm getting at is those that have more Israelite blood are more likely to accept the gospel. Those that have more Israelite blood are much more likely, I think, likely to accept the gospel. Okay, so let's continue. It doesn't stop there. There's more. Spanish forces included soldiers from elsewhere in New Spain, as well as broader Latin America, many of whom deserted and intermingled with the wider population. So let's go back. Let's go to the map. Let's go to Philippines. Okay. Let's go to Google Maps. So, okay. So first we have Jews that after the abomination of desolation by the Roman Empire went to different parts of mostly Europe, but other places too. One big group coming to Spain and Portugal, and then the Reconquest happens. They're either removed, killed, or converted, and so you have these kind of like hidden Jews among the Spanish and Portuguese population. They come over here. Some of them come over here to the Philippines and intermix. Okay, and then on top of that, with what we just read, you had people over here from Latin America, which we know has Manasseh DNA, right? Because you have the Nephites, Lamanites, but the remnants of the Lamanites, they're Manasseh, and Spain was over here too, and a bunch of them were also coming over here and intermixing, right? So you see how maybe the Philippines, compared to other places like Papua New Guinea, Indonesia, which Indonesia, by the way, is a huge Muslim country, Malaysia, you can see how it's different. It's different. You can see how this might happen, why we're seeing what we are. Okay, immigration blurred the racial caste system. Spain maintained its own towns and cities. British forces occupied Manila from 1762 to 1764 during the Seven Years' War, with Spanish rule restored through the 1763 Treaty of Paris. The Spanish consider their war with the Muslims in Southeast Asia an extension of the Reconquest. So even up until almost the time of the United States becoming a country, you still have the Reconquest going on in some sense. The Spanish-Moro conflict lasted for several hundred years. In the last quarter of the 19th century, Spain conquered portions of Mindanao and Jolo, and the Moro Muslims in the Sultanate of Sulu formally recognized Spanish sovereignty. So, well, all the way into the 1800s, they considered the Reconquest still going on. In the 19th century, Philippine ports opened the world trade, and shifts started occurring within Filipino society. The Latin American Wars of Independence and renewed immigration led to shifts of social identity, with the term Filipino shifting from referring to just Spaniards born in the Philippines to a term encompassing all people in the archipelago. This identity shift was driven by wealthy families of mixed ancestry, which it became a national identity. So a lot of mixing going on here. A lot of mixing. A lot of Israelite blood being introduced to that area. In 1898, the Spanish-American War began and reached the Philippines. Aguinaldo returned, resumed the revolution, and declared independence from Spain on June 12, 1898. The first Philippine Republic was established on January 21st, 1899. But the islands had been ceded by Spain to the United States alongside Puerto Rico and Guam. So that's why we have those, is because of the Spanish-American War. Puerto Rico, Guam, and then we essentially were over the Philippines as well. As a result of the latter's victory in the Spanish-American War, America won. It became increasingly clear the United States would not recognize the first Philippine Republic. The Philippine-American War broke out. The war resulted in the deaths of 250,000 to 1 million civilians, mostly due to famine and disease. After the defeat of the First Philippine Republic, an American civilian government was established. American forces continued to secure and extend their control over the islands, suppressing an attempted extension of the Philippine Republic, securing the Sultanate of Sulu, and establishing control over the interior mountainous areas that had resisted Spanish conquest. So basically, they tried so they basically thought that they were going to be able to start their own country declaring independence from Spain, but then the United States was like, nah. Okay, on July 4th, 1946, the Philippines was officially recognized by the United States as an independent nation through the Treaty of Manila during the presidency of Manuel Roxas, or Rojas. So, that's interesting. So their official, it seems like that their official Independence Day is also July 4th because of the United States when it gave it to them. And there was a little bit more, I believe. Let me zoom out. It'll make it easier. Under demographics, let's see. Yeah, starting right here. Sorry, bear with me. There was also a westward expansion of Papuan ancestry to Papua New Guinea, to eastern Indonesia and Mindanao, detected among the Blan and Sangur. I accidentally highlighted that. That means nothing. European DNA is present in many Filipinos today. European DNA. We know that aside from the Jewish DNA in Spaniards, we know that there's a lot of Israelite blood just in Europe in general from the 10 lost tribes that went north. Okay, so Jewish or Judah, European DNA, which has Israelite blood, and then we also have any Latin Americans that came over that are bringing over Manasseh. So it really is a mixing pot right there of all these different Israelite bloodlines. So European DNA is present in many Filipinos today. Under Spanish rule, there was also immigration from elsewhere in the empire, especially from Latin America. Manasseh. As of 2015, there were 220,000 to 600,000 American citizens living in the country, so there's still intermixing going on right there. Filipino and English are the official languages of the country, so that also probably helps, is that English has become one of the two official languages, right? Regardless of how you feel about the colonization of Philippines or any war throughout history, good things can come out of bad things. And English certainly has probably helped a lot of people connect with the church. Okay, both Filipino and English are used in government, education, print, broadcast media, and business. With third local languages often being used at the same time. Religion. Christianity is the dominant faith, shared by about 89% of the population. That is a huge factor. That, like we were talking about before, with the Catholic missionaries from Spain converting most of them. This obviously sets them on that path to understand, be more receptive to the gospel. As of 2013, the country had the world's third largest Roman Catholic population. So gosh, for the Roman Catholic Church, they're a powerhouse. They have the third largest Roman Catholic population and was the largest Christian nation in Asia. So yeah, there's a lot going on with the Philippines. Here, this is another group. They're called Shavei Israel. They also look at all these different communities. And remember over here when we were talking about in the Philippines, we have this group here. Well, they are considered part of the BNEI ANOUSIM. If you come over here to Shavei Israel, we have BNEI ANOUSIM. So, but this right here on this website, they're focusing mostly on Spain, Portugal, Latin America, and Italy. So if you want to read more about that, you can. I'll put it in the description below. I think there's a few things here I want to read. This is on the church website, A Brief History of the Church in the Philippines. A few Filipinos joined the church in the 1940s and the 50s, but missionary work did not begin in earnest until 1961. After that point, it accelerated quickly. By the end of the decade, the church had a presence on 8 major islands. In 1973, the first stake in the Philippines was organized. Okay. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So that is why I think this is happening. This is why they're such a powerhouse in the church, is because of their incredibly unique history, and I think because there's so much mixing in of all these different tribal groups. You have Judah there, you have Manasseh there, and then you have all the other northern tribes coming in from Europe there as well. It is a mixing pot. It's a mixing pot of all the tribes. That's what the Philippines is. And I think that's why we see so much success in that area. Alright, that's going to be it for this one. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it. Leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Did you serve in the Philippines on your mission, or have you been there? Do you have Filipino friends? And then make sure to share this with anyone that would find this interesting, especially people that you know that served in the Philippines or are Filipino. I'm sure I'm not telling them anything new, but I don't know. This might be interesting to them anyway, and I'll talk to you guys later.